animals aren't perfect. They have, freckles, they've got spots, they've got weird little pattern dots. There's almost like the perfection in the imperfection when it comes to animals. And so I think sometimes I look at it that way, as if I do go over, an area that I didn't quite expect to, I'll incorporate it, and then I'll kind of turn it into something that is natural.
This episode of the Cold Blooded Caffeine Podcast is brought to you by Cold Blooded Caffeine Company, your specialty coffee roaster with a wildlife conservation mindset. Drink coffee, save the rainforest with Cold Blooded Caffeine, where 5% of the proceeds of every bag sold are donated directly back to either Rainforest Alliance or USARK to help support reptile and amphibian conservation efforts both in the wild and in captivity. Check us out today at coldbloodedcaffeine.com. Welcome to the Cold Blooded Caffeine Podcast. I'm Trey.
And I am McKendrick.
And we are excited to bring you our first ever guest on the Cold Blooded Caffeine Podcast.
Yeah.
So we mentioned it in our last podcast that we were going to start bringing on some guests. And I really can't think of anyone else that I'd rather have on first. Because I think she's probably been the longest that has known about and has worked with Cold Blooded Caffeine.
You're giving it a little bit away.
I have. I did say she. So we'll go ahead and bring her in. But before we do, I'll give a little bit of background. So our first guest is Adeline Robinson Bihlmaier, which Adeline Robinson Art. And so we'll go ahead and bring Adeline into this podcast. Hey, Adeline.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored. Wow.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on. So, like I said, we have known each other probably the entire time that Cold Blooded Caffeine was a thing. So we met at the Fort Mill Show Me Show, and that was probably 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago or so.
Yeah, we were neighbors. I remember, and that was fun.
Yeah, we were neighbors, and I actually just brought the idea of Cold Blooded Caffeine to you and asked if you did logos and things like that. Long story short, here we are 3 years later, and glad to have you on the podcast. So
it's amazing to see how much it's grown.
Oh, thank you so much. So probably most of the people that we work with know who you are, but we'll let you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit who you are, what your business is, and your background.
Absolutely. So Adeline Robinson Art. I create wildlife art specializing in reptile and amphibian art. I've been working with reptiles and amphibians for a very, very long time. And because I worked with them for so long and then did art on the side, finally decided to combine them down the road. So the animals kind of came first and then the art came later, as a lot of people like to ask. But yeah, that's just, it's something that I'm very grateful to be able to do and bring awareness to cool critters people don't know about.
That's so awesome.
That's very cool.
So what kind of drew you to that reptile and amphibian focus? You said the animals came first. Kind of what drew you to reptiles and amphibians in general?
Initially, I honestly couldn't really remember because I was so young. So growing up, I grew up in Chicago, and so we were in the middle of the city, and I would dream of going out into the woods, going out and finding snakes. Anytime I could, I would go to the local park and I would try to catch tadpoles and measure them and see if I could track their growth. And I've always pretty much been into that. I'm very grateful in that I had an animal-friendly household. So my dad would bring home critters and surprise me with like a new animal, that we would both geek out about. So that pretty much is where it all started for the most part. I did always do some art as well, and I would draw some animals here and there, but it was a little bit separate. It wasn't quite as reptile specific as it ended up turning into later. So yeah, I've just been keeping them for a long time. I started out with aquatics. My first job was actually at a specialty fish store, and I worked there for about 8 years. And throughout that time, I started collecting reptiles and started doing small educational shows. I worked at the Wildlife Discovery Center in Lake Forest, and we would do like presentations about, the local reptiles and different snake species. And that kind of snowballed into, working at a birds and beasts pet shop in Crystal Lake, Illinois. And then it turned into, now I've got a collection of animals, I'm breeding reptiles, and this is my life.
That's so awesome. Yeah.
So when did you pick up the art side? How young were you when you started like drawing and making art?
So I've been drawing as long as I can remember, but it was mostly equine art, some fantasy stuff, I'll draw dragons, kind of just whatever a kid would draw, I guess. Mostly animals, but it wasn't really a prominent part of, I would say, my work or anything I ever thought I would do for work. I enjoyed drawing, and I did a lot of, classes in high school. But after high school, I was so busy working and, working on a career with animals that I didn't really draw much. So for about like almost 10 years, I barely drew anything. And it actually took getting out of the reptile industry. I got a graphic design job and moved out of state. My now husband, he was a photographer. So we were kind of a photography graphic design duo. We left the animal industry, moved out of state, worked at this auction house. And at first it was okay. I really enjoyed the work. I didn't mind it. But after a while, it kind of became a toxic work environment. And so after work, I would come home and I just decided to pick up drawing again after seeing the Inktober challenge going around. So I don't know if you're familiar with what that is, but it's a challenge every October. So there's a prompt list for every single day in October. And there'll be something basic. It'll be like solitude, or it'll be growth, or it'll be a word like that. And the challenge is to do a small drawing every day based on whatever that theme is. And me, naturally, I had to make it animal themed. So every single one I did, I relate it to an animal. And so I just did that like after work to try to de-stress. I really missed being around the community. And so that was kind of my way to stay connected, I guess. And I was like, well, I haven't drawn in years. Like maybe I can start picking that up again. So I started, and a friend of mine, this is kind of like a little bit where it kicked off. It was between Chris's encouragement and a friend that just asked, hey, do you have an art page? Like, no, I don't have an art page. Like been not that good. I don't think anybody would want to see it. But the fact that it was asked then kind of got me thinking about it. And I was like, well, maybe for fun, like maybe I'll do a little art page and that's where I'll share my stuff. And with being in the animal industry for so long and having so many friends that are awesome and amazing, encouraging, some people saw my artwork and were like, hey, would you draw my snake? I'm like, sure, why not? Like, this is fun. Let's get into it. And next thing I know, I'm starting to do some logos and I'm starting to do some commissions. And I'm still like mind boggled that this is even happening. Cause like, what do you mean you want me to draw it? So after doing that for a while,
sorry, just to let you know, I think your art is pretty predominantly placed throughout our office. Like I'm looking around and I see Adeline Robinson stuff. We've got stickers on the refrigerator. We've got pictures on the wall, in the lobby, of course, bags of coffee with your stuff all over the place. So very well represented in our office as well.
It's so mind-boggling.
We didn't say it at the beginning, but I mean, she's the designer for.
We probably should have listed that. Yeah,
right? So the logo that you see for Cold Blooded Caffeine was actually designed by Adeline. So and a lot of the other bags from all of the other clients are also similar, designed by Adeline. So yeah, we definitely appreciate what you've done for us. And like Trey said, your work is everywhere. We see it every single day we walk into the office. And Trey won't tell you. I don't know if he told you. I was an artist for a while.
I showed her that picture that you drew of our logo. Well, but to be fair, she has to put up with a lot of my stuff as well, because I'll send her like pictures, be like, hey, I want a picture like this. And it's like a stick figure. And she comes back with like a Rembrandt or something like as a response. And I'm like, well, I did feel pretty decent about mine until you saw what she
It helps so much though when you guys sketch out, your ideas. It helps put it into a way there that it's easily translated for me to be able to take it forward. So no, I love it when people see sketches of their idea and their vision, because I'm like, okay, I see it. Let's create something that you really enjoy.
Well,
Awesome.
we're glad that my rudimentary graphic design skills can produce, at least help produce something that you that was as good as what you did. So, okay, so so you did you start with the equine picture? I have some of, so I think I bought my mother-in-law one of your equine drawings. Did you start with the horse drawings, or is that kind of like a combination of the reptiles? What came first, the horse or the reptile?
Horses primarily. So I've been an avid equestrian since I was very, very young, drawing horses, or I've been drawing horses longer than anything. Which is a little bit funny because now I don't draw them as much anymore because I'm a little bit more focused on reptiles, but it is what I'm drawing the longest. I've been riding horses and working at stables since I was a kid. I used to trade, working at the barn and shoveling and trying to do grooming and whatever I could to help to be able to get lessons in exchange, and then eventually taught riding lessons and worked at several barns and helped manage some barns. So that is a big part of my life, as well as the equine side and the reptile side too.
Very cool.
So, I mean, you've talked about a few places that you've worked. Have you ever worked outside of anything related to animals? Like, did you ever work in like a grocery store or fast food or any of that?
Outside of the one graphic design job where I went out of state for the auction company, no, everything has been animal related. So I've been very lucky in that regard, and growing up, I thought, okay, I need to become a veterinarian because that's what you become. If you're a person that loves animals, you got to be a vet. And it didn't occur to me until maybe high school. I was like, well, there's so many different avenues of being able to work with animals in different ways, that work for different people. And so I was offered my first job at the fish store at Fish Planet in Deerfield, Illinois. And then that snowballed into the Wildlife Discovery Center because both my bosses, they knew each other, and one of them would frequent the aquatic store. And it literally went from there, working at barns, working at Birds and Beast Pet Shop, and being able to do this. So yeah, very, very grateful to be able to work with animals.
Very awesome. So neither McKendrick nor myself are artistic in any way possible.
Hey, speak for yourself, buddy.
And actually, in your artwork, in any way possible. So, talk us through your thought process as you approach like a new piece. So, like, let's say you're commissioned something, and you, or actually, no, I want to go the other way. You have a vision for an animal that you want to create, a piece of art that you want to create. Can you talk through your process of how you approach something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's interesting because the approach does change depending on what the project is. So some pieces will require a lot more brainstorming for the composition versus others. So it kind of depends on what I'm looking to do. So as an example, for me personally, if I'm wanting to do a traditional piece for myself, first I'm thinking about the species. If it's species only, what I try to do is find a good group of reference photos to get a good idea of how I want to display that animal. So I get a lot of amazing photos sent. I'm a reference photo hoarder. If anybody has any awesome photos of any species, I want to hoard those. I want to hold on to them. But some photos that may make the animal look absolutely incredible, they won't necessarily translate to an art piece. So typically what I'm looking for is full body, if possible, where you can see the pattern or you can see the characteristics of that species. If I'm doing a head portrait, kind of like this guy over here, the black caiman, I want to be able to see the things that are very well pronounced in that species, like the ridges on that guy, on his face. There's so many interesting markers that we may not notice about animals that, makes them special individually and as a species. So there's a lot of technicalities that I try to incorporate while still being able to have the whole picture look cohesive, I guess, or like in a good composition.
That's pretty cool.
So usually full body where you can see the pattern, or a really nice shot of the head where you see the color. There isn't too much glare on it, and it's at an angle that it's not like a goofy close up where there's a wide angle. You want to be able to see the animal as a whole.
Now, do you draw any fictitious or fantasy type animals or drawings of things that are just like weird or doesn't exist? Like I saw something on the internet recently with what was it? Trey, do you remember? It's like a zebra sloth combined weird something. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's kind of weird. I mean, but some of them, I mean, who knows? People ask for strange things these days. And I don't know if, throughout your career, have you ever had a request for something as weird or as odd as that?
I don't think I've had them requested, but I have drawn a lot of weird stuff. It's like almost you just have to at some points. Yeah, I've done like weird animal combinations just for funsies. I don't do as much fantasy stuff anymore as I used to. I used to draw a lot of dragons. I really enjoy drawing dragons. The way their scales are, it's very reptilian and fantasy at the same time, so you can kind of make your own spin on it. So dragons are something that I typically have drawn a lot. But yeah, I've done a lot of weird combos. There was actually a post that I made, I think about a year ago, where it was a photo of me with my iPad, and it says, "What do you think I'm drawing?" And everybody that submitted an idea, I actually drew it in one giant like collage type piece and posted it. And it was really goofy. That was like hippopotamus, giraffes, or like it was just a weird combination. Pretty fun.
Very cool. Yeah, that's interesting. And I see a lot of your artwork is in a similar medium or kind of the way you draw. It's usually looks similar composition wise, but I've also seen you do like paintings. Like I know you did the surfboard in Daytona.
Yeah,
was that painted instead of drawn? Correct.
So it's an interesting. Interesting terminology,
okay,
because everything is sketched out and everything is drawn to start, but it's the method in which the piece is created. So a lot of these pieces, they're done in Copic markers and pens, which is technically a drawing because they're inks. And other times I'll do paintings with paint or paint markers. And so it's kind of interesting. It's almost like an opposite type of process, I guess. With the Copics, I go light and then layer dark. Then for the paintings, usually I go dark and then I can layer light as well, or kind of mess with it a little bit differently. So yeah, they're done in kind of completely two different methods, but at the end of the day, they're still drawn in a similar way. It's just the outcome's a little different on that style.
So much stuff.
Does that make sense?
I know nothing about.
No,
it sounds great.
It makes perfect sense. So, and I'm going to ask, it's like probably choosing your favorite child, but like, what is your preferred method? Like, do you have one that you kind of go to more often than others?
I enjoy the Copics. I think they're a lot of fun to play with, but I do really enjoy painting too. So part of the reason that some of the pieces I do during the auctions are a little bit more of a pop style, or a little bit, it's kind of a different, brighter, simpler style in a way, is because I need to get those done in one day. And so because of that, I try to make the piece in a way that I can get done and still have it fun and bright and colorful without bogging myself down on doing scale by scale work. So that's why they look so different, and they're in those two different styles for the auctions versus my realism work. Where with these guys, the whole point of them, almost in my mind, is to see how detailed I can get. And so that for me is a lot of fun. I mean, they're both very fun and they're both very different. I feel like when I'm doing live paintings in front of people, I almost need to not necessarily loosen up, but not get so caught up in the tight details, and make a looser piece where maybe there's more movement, where you see the basics of the details that you need, but they're not overboard. Where with these, I just really enjoy getting as detailed and as tight as I can get. It's kind of a personal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so speaking about like that level of detail, are there any, like, obviously that's a challenge, you pushing yourself to get as detailed as you can. Are there other challenges that you face specifically with reptiles and amphibians of drawing them over other subjects?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I really enjoy drawing species that aren't super well known. For me personally, that's what I'm really into. And the trouble is, when they're not super well known, there's usually not a whole lot of photos of them. So
That's
there's
fair.
been quite a few crazy hunts that I've had to go on to be able to find reference photos for certain species, just because they either don't exist or there's like two and they're fuzzy and look like taken with a potato. So there's a lot of homework involved when it comes to trying to get the illustration as realistic as possible. So sometimes I'll reach out to certain breeders, certain vendors that have worked with them, or researchers that have really good photos of them. And I go, hey, you know, would you mind if I use your piece for reference? Because I'm trying to find this animal and it's hard to find. So usually people are really, really awesome about it and excited that somebody else is excited about them too. But that is a definite challenge for sure. And then in some photos too, you can't always see the type of details that you need to help make the animal stand out. Or if it's an animal I'm not super familiar with too, that I haven't worked with personally, I may not know that, you know, for the black caiman, one of the big pronounced things about them is the fact that they've got ridges on their face. So,
That's
you know,
fair.
you see that in their skulls. I wouldn't have known that if a buddy of mine, Jason, hadn't pointed it out, and he's like, hey, make sure you get this detail in there because that is a marker for the species. So there's a lot of technicality difficulties, which are, you know, it's always really exciting when I can finally get that awesome photo or combine a couple photos to make it happen. And when I get help, that's always appreciated too. But yeah, sometimes it can be pretty tricky.
So do you have an example of, along those lines, one particular species that you found really rewarding to draw or paint?
There's been a few, and it's interesting because every piece I think that I really enjoy for different things about it. So as an example, the Indian gharial that I did was a huge challenge because it's in motion, it's catching a fish, and it's in water. And so that was like super intimidating for me. And I'm very grateful that I have a lot of awesome friends that work with these guys. And so, you know, the same buddy, Jason, that helped me with the black caiman, he was giving me pointers on like, hey, this is something you want to look out for. This is something you want to add. So being able to talk to people that are working with these animals, you know, taking care of them and trying to make sure it looks cool and not too stiff or scientific, and that there's movement in there. And then with the added water on top of that, like I'd never drawn water before. And so I didn't know how to draw water, and it scared, you know, it really scared me for a few moments there, but it ended up working out. And so that was a piece that I was really, really proud of. And it ended up winning the regional award for North America for the Copic Award when I submitted it. So that was really exciting too, because then it was
wow.
I initially almost kind of discounted it a little bit because I critique everything that I do, and the fact that it was able to win something was pretty exciting.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So have you like entered into any other like contest to get recognized or won any other awards?
Not really.
Okay.
After that one, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did it. And I ended up missing the deadline for the next one, but that's okay. I'll be entering into the next one for sure. But I did submit to enter into the Society of Animal Artists, so that was pretty exciting. And I know they're going to be having some coming shows, like jury shows, that I'll be submitting some pieces to. And there's some local galleries out here too that I'm hoping to submit things to. A little bit of the hard thing too about submitting to galleries or exhibitions is they want to have the original piece there. And because I have sold a lot of the originals, or I don't hold on to them myself, I don't really have a big number of originals on hand. So that's something that I'm hoping to work on this year, is to create a bigger body of work and a really good portfolio, so I can try to submit some stuff.
So how long does it take you to make some of the art that you make? Like, is there like an average time? And then what's been one of the pieces that has taken you the longest to create?
So on average, when you see my pieces like the corn snake as an example, or some of the indigos or some of the frogs, usually those I would say between 5 to 10 hours. If it's a frog that doesn't have a whole lot of texture, I can usually get that done a little quicker. And then if it's, a chameleon or an animal that has a lot going on in there, usually 10 hours-ish, give or take. For my larger pieces that I do, that 18 by 24 size, they can be around 20 hours or so.
Wow. Do you tend to do those like all in one sitting, or not 20 hours, but like the 8 to 10 hour ones? Do you do that in one sitting, or do you like?
I try to. Yeah. Sometimes I have to split them up in a couple days, just because I'll start it later in the day, and then I don't want to burn myself out and stay up super late, so I'll pick it up the next day. But typically, I like to try to fit them into one sitting if I can. So most of them were done in one day, sometimes two. And then for the larger pieces, usually that gets split up as well. So like 30-hour pieces will get split up over time.
Makes sense. And you were going to say, what's the longest one you've ever done?
I think it was about 30 hours. I could be completely wrong, honestly. The crested gecko that I did, I decided to go with the micro scales. And so every scale that was done on the original was done individually and with thought as to where the scale was, to make sure it didn't look artificial, I guess, or I wanted it to be as natural as possible. So yeah, every single tiny scale in that one, that took a really long time. And
I wouldn't have thought that would have been the longest one, but now that you say that makes a lot of sense, because they're teeny tiny little scales.
That would scare me.
Scales, yeah. Where I think the big Sri Lankan pit viper that I did, that was probably about 20 something hours, maybe not quite 30, but the scales are so much bigger because I'm working on a large scale. So it doesn't take as long trying to get all the details. Couldn't help myself.
So I have to admit, it absolutely terrifies me watching you paint at that or draw at that detail, because I know in my mind I would be worried the whole time that I was going to mess up, like just terrified that I was going to mess up. So I respect so much what you do and do it so publicly at shows and stuff.
Yeah, because that's what I say. The same thing. Like, man, you're like, your confidence level is like very high.
It's amazing
to come to a show, work on a drawing throughout the show, and then like auction it off at the auction.
I'm worried that I'm gonna mess up a cup of coffee. like much less thousands of dollars worth of art doing it live. So much
I think
respect.
what helps with it a little bit is animals aren't perfect. They have, freckles, they've got spots, they've got weird little pattern dots. There's almost like the perfection in the imperfection when it comes to animals. And so I think sometimes I look at it that way, as if I do go over, an area that I didn't quite expect to, I'll incorporate it, and then I'm going to turn it into something that is natural, I guess, for the animal. That makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So do you just like wake up inspired every day to, like, we come in, we have orders, we got a roast coffee, we got a delivery service, we got to go out, spend 8 hours on the road delivering. So do you wake up, go to the, your art studio every day and just start on something every day? Do you have to feel inspired? Like, how do you manage like your work week?
So that's actually been something that I've been trying to figure out for the last 3 years. So previously, I've always worked directly at home, and it's a blessing and a curse to be able to do that. It is awesome because you don't have to go anywhere, but it is not awesome when you're working on a piece and your laundry basket's staring at you. You're looking at some cages that need to be cleaned, and the dishes need to get done, and you're thinking of all these things while you're doing that. Meanwhile, when you finally get to the dishes and you're finally doing the laundry, you're looking at your work desk going, oh, there's so much that I need to get done right now. So a lot of what I've been actually learning this year, and I guess at the end of last year too, is separating work from personal life, because when there's no separation, it can be a little bit much. You're on like constant overdrive, which is kind of where I've been, where I'm always thinking about work. I'm always thinking about the next project. I'm always thinking about the next show. What do I need to do? And that little voice just never turned off. And so I'm very, very grateful to be able to have the opportunity to have a external studio outside of the house. We're still currently working on it. And it is just a huge change for me to be able to leave all that and focus on what I need to do here. So that the change in space has really helped a lot. And, you know, you're not going to wake up every day inspired. You're not going to wake up every day super motivated, but you can, I think, create that motivation with starting work. So on those days that I really don't feel like doing anything, or I'm just having a hard time thinking of anything, I'll get in, I'll just start working on stuff. And as I do, I feel accomplished. I feel good about it. And so then that kind of turns that into a positive role. And then that's when I start getting excited. I start brainstorming. I start thinking of new things. And then we're going. So, you know, it's kind of a almost an opposite approach, because waiting for inspiration or waiting for motivation, you know, kind of leaves you at the whim of whenever that shows up. And it doesn't always. Sometimes life is stressful or things are going on and you can't quite get there, but you can create that. So that's what I've been working on.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
so you travel a lot as well, going to trade shows and things like that. Are you, so you're still doing that? Are you still doing that like as the level you were doing a year or two ago? Cause I know like last year,
not quite as much.
Yeah. So talk to us though about the trade shows. I mean, you know, we talked a little bit previously about you doing live paintings or live drawings at the shows, but you also sell prints and stickers and mugs and stuff like that. As someone like we are, not directly, I know you do breed some reptiles, but your main business is not breeding reptiles. How do you find the trade shows? Like, is it lucrative? Obviously you still do them, so you find value in them, but can you talk about, you know, being a not reptile seller at a reptile show a little bit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So again, I feel like I'm super new at this. I went full time February of 2020. And so, you know, at that time, a lot of the shows had gotten canceled. A lot of the shows, you know, were postponed, and it was my whole plan for the year was now changed. And so I did a lot of online work, a lot of online advertising. And then the shows opened up. There were more shows. Initially, there was just Tinley and Tourfest were the only two that were out here. And so that kind of opened up a whole world of, now there's more shows. They're more frequent. They're in more areas. And so I tested it out. We checked out a bunch of different shows. We did a lot of shows in 2021. And it kind of got to the point where I noticed I wasn't being able to create as much because I was always on the road. And as much as
ask you about that. How difficult was it to travel on the road? Finish your story, and then I'm interested in. Yeah.
Oh no, you're good. I mean, it's part of the story, because I bring my iPad with, and I'm like, I'm going to do a digital drawing while I'm on the road. And then within like 5 minutes of starting something, like I just start getting car sick. And so I've only ever been able to do one piece. Or I guess technically two pieces, like from start to finish on the road. But yeah, it's hard to be able to balance those two things. And so we tried a bunch. We kind of cast our net out to see what would work well, and you know, took notes on the shows and how they did, and we would see, you know, the trends of how they were doing for us. And so we were getting more and more selective about the shows that we're doing. And so this year we're actually doing pretty much the same shows that we did last year, but it's a lot less than 2021. Because yeah, that balance of being able to create and be at a show and then have new stuff for the show too. Because, you know, you don't want to bring the same stuff every time. Otherwise, you know, when someone comes up, they're going, oh, well, I already have that and I have that. You know, do you have anything new? So it's been an interesting balance of just trying to learn. Okay, well, typically, ideally, I'd like to bring at least a few new prints to the shows or a few new things to the shows to be able to keep things interesting and fun. But yeah, it's been pretty neat trying to see which ones work for us and the different crowds too. Something I never thought about when we did our first Daytona show was people in Florida are looking for way different art or creatures than people in Illinois. You know, you're not going to see turtles or alligators or anything like that at the shows out here. And then so I get to the Daytona show.
It's like 0 degrees, right? There's no alligators.
I was gonna say I don't think you can see the snow out there right now. But yeah, so I get to the show and hey, do you have alligator prints? No. Do you have tegus? No. Do you have iguanas? No. Sea turtles? No. Turtles or tortoises? No. So a lot of it has been learning, you know, what people are looking for regionally. And then, you know, some shows, it's mostly families that are coming in. So they're not going to be looking for, you know, a several $1,000 painting to put in their living room. They're looking for something for their kids because they want to commemorate their first reptile show. You know, they may not be ready to get an animal yet. Maybe they're planning on getting an animal, or maybe they just did, and they want to get some art for their kid. You know, it's kind of reading different crowds and different folks that are coming through too. So it's definitely been interesting checking the different shows out and seeing what it's like. Because yeah, we're not selling reptiles, and that's what people are going there for.
Yeah. So I've one of the things that I've noticed with you as well, and we mentioned community earlier, is your involvement in the community, and directly, but also indirectly. Like you do a lot of things behind the scenes that support the industry. Like you do a lot of artwork for NARBC and USARK, and you know the donations that you give to USARK and all that behind the scenes stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means to you as someone that has been into the animals as long as you have and get to work with so many different people within the industry?
Oh, for sure. I mean, truthfully, I've been around so many amazing people, and I just feel so lucky to be able to do this. I feel like it's a privilege to be able to do what I do and to be able to keep the animals that we keep. And so I want to try to give back as much as I can, because you know, this is my whole life, and I wouldn't be able to do this without USARK, you know, making sure that we can keep the animals that we keep, that transportation, you know, laws aren't going into place where they're banning, you know, educational shows from transporting animals, or zoos transporting animals or state lines. There's just so much to it that they do for the community, and I want to support that as much as I can. And people that give back, people that, you know, are on the front lines trying to help breed these really cool, amazing animals that we're all in love with, that are actually doing it, actually releasing those animals into the wild. I want to be able to help real conservation efforts as well. So I just feel very grateful, and I want to help that as much as possible. So, I mean, we wouldn't be here without the amazing animals that we either get to keep or enjoy or look at or photograph or check out. You know, it all revolves around them. So the more we can help them, I think the better off the community will be. And
I think we lost you there for a second, but that's okay. We're back. And the real question. So probably the most important question I'm going to ask all afternoon. Did Chris ever finish the Lego Star Wars that he got at St. Louis?
Was that St. Louis?
It was St. Louis, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was St. Louis. I think it was.
Did he ever finish the Lego Star Wars?
No, he hasn't opened it. No.
I
think he might be keeping it in the box still. It's actually like right across from me. I know. I'm like, are you going to open it? And he's like, I don't know. So I think he's still like sitting on deciding whether or not he should open it or not. And it's a thing. He told me or like holidays or birthdays or whatever, he would keep it in the box, like just have boxes and boxes because he'd hold on to it. So I'm not sure if he's planning on opening it or not. I kind of hope he does, because I really want to see it get put together.
Yeah, I'd love to see it too.
Well, we'll harass him.
we gotta harass him.
Okay.
So one kind of last question for me: is there like a thing, a place, a piece that you want to create to have in a location? Like, is there like a dream come true type of event that you would like to be a part of, or a piece that you would like to create that is somewhere, in the universe? Like, what's your dream of where you want to take your art?
Oh, for sure. There's so many things I've been wanting to paint. So part of what I've been doing for this last year is actually slowly cutting out taking commissions from the general public
Okay.
to focus on traditional paintings that I like to do. So I've had a lot of ideas. I've had a lot of big projects that I'd like to do. And so I'm only taking on like a small select amount of projects this year, so that way I can better focus on, creating better art. I want to continue, and B, to get those ideas out and on canvas. So that way they're not just living in here. I need to get them done and make them. So I've been working on a Patreon to be able to have that as an avenue to be able to showcase some of the projects and things that I'll be working on, and to be able to free up some time to be able to, like, I'm talking like big canvas for life-size things.
Okay.
Wow. Cool. Very cool.
Give us a little sneak peek though. What's one that you want? Like, what is a subject that you're like, oh man, this is on the to-do list? Just give us a little.
Yeah, there's so many things. And this is another part of something that I've really enjoyed about being able to do this for work, is traveling to shows. I always try to go herping wherever I want to see all the critters that live wherever I'm going. And so a couple years ago, when we went to herping on the salt flats, and we're climbing up these mountains on the edge of the salt flats, and I found horn lizards. And that was like a lifer for me. We don't have anything like that up here in the Midwest. So finding the horn lizards was just absolutely amazing. And I had this idea in my head of what the perfect pose, or the perfect picture. And after catching a bunch of them, I tried to get it. I tried to pose them, but it didn't quite work. And finally, we're in the van, and we're driving down the mountain, and at the corner of my eye, I see a little something go by just on the side of the road.
Wow.
Standing on a rock. And I was like, it could be my imagination. I'm like, Chris, can you just pull over, please? Like, I think I saw something. I could be totally wrong. I could have just imagined it. It probably isn't actually there, but I just need to see. And so we pull over, and I get out, and there's a horn lizard basking on a rock with his arms up, pointed to the sky, and he's just perfect. And so I'm trying to get these photos, on my phone from far away, in case he gets spooked and he goes. And I get closer, closer, and closer until, I kid you not, I am as close to the camera as as I am with this little dude. So he's just sun. His head is kind of looking back over his shoulder, and he didn't move. He let me get right up close to him to get those photos. And that was the image that I had in my head, that I was really hoping for. So that's something that I would really like to paint, is a horn lizard looking over the salt flats on the mountains. I really want to start doing that. The animals are what they are is just amazing, that they have evolved the way they have, that they have all these really cool camouflage, that they have all these things about them, and their environment is directly correlated to that. So I'd love to get animals in their environments. And so that's one that I've had in my head for a while now. There's some other pieces as well of some birds, aquatic, some other animals as well, doing what they do in the wild. So I would love to be able to try to capture that, and to be able to get some more species that haven't been drawn much or painted.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. I can't wait to see the salt flats with the horn lizard. That's so awesome.
Be cool.
Okay, so before we finish up, I did want to talk a little bit more about so like I mentioned earlier, our tangential relationship to the reptile community. So as a coffee business, we keep animals and we support the reptile industry, and like you do as well, you keep animals, you breed animals, you support the reptile industry. Do you see that there's room for other people within this space to grow? And if so, what advice would you have for someone that wants to be a part of the reptile industry, not necessarily breed reptiles, but maybe have a business that supports that industry? So do you see there's room for that? And if so, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, 100%. I love being able to support other businesses, because a lot of us, for a lot of people, they don't breed reptiles full time as their main source of income. A lot of people have other jobs, other passions, other hobbies as well. And I always love to be able to try to support each other in that. I've known several folks that I've done logos for that have incorporated their main job or their hobby with reptiles as well, and combine them together in a way that works for them and is kind of their brand. So I think there totally is space. That's the beauty of this. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, what do you think of other artists getting in? I'm like, there's room for everybody. Everybody's got a different style. Everybody's got a different thing that they're doing, and there's space for all of us. And so I think anybody getting in that may not necessarily want to just rely primarily on breeding reptiles, think of something that you would enjoy offering, or something you would enjoy doing that you think other people might be able to use as well, business wise. So, say you want to come to a show and you want to have business, what do you think that people might enjoy? What do you think they might like? And do some research, make friends. It never hurts to network and chat with and ask them questions. If you see somebody doing something kind of similar, you can always ask. It won't hurt anyone. Worst case scenario, we're at the same spot that you did. So I always enjoy and get excited when other artists get excited about wanting to try to start a booth or want to get involved with getting their artwork out there. Yeah, let's do it. Happy to help.
So cool. Yeah, that's so awesome. And I think I'll say, and you're included in this, is that everyone that we've met has been so nice and receptive to what we're trying to do. And I think, to echo your message, is if you go in asking for help and asking to learn and trying to do the right things, people will be there to support you, right? Yeah. They're going to try and help you. And there's not a single person that I've met that hasn't wanted to see the best out of pretty much anybody that was trying to do it the right way. Now, if you come in and try and show off and be big-headed and stuff, you might not get that kind of response. But asking legitimate questions, asking for help, I don't think there's been a person that I've seen that's turned anyone away.
Yeah. And I would think, and the same, right? We get a lot of comments on like these podcasts about what did you do to get started and how much was the investment? And we're not going to tell people, don't ask those questions because we want to be the only one in this space. Like, nope, there's room for everyone here to be successful and, enjoy the fruits of the work that they put in to get into the industry. So yeah, we're the same. Like, we want to see everybody succeed, everybody win. And it's good to hear like common thinking from others in the industry as well.
And I love seeing good people succeed. And I'm not trying to butter you up, but really, really so happy for your success. And, I know that we don't, like, people don't see the work that we do together. We work a lot behind the scenes. You do a lot with our logos and stuff like that. So, just to say thank you for what you do. And there's never been a moment where you haven't, dropped everything and helped us out. Like, when we have stuff that needs to get done, and you're always there to help us. So we thank you. And I know that what we do isn't a large part of your business, but we really appreciate everything that you've done to help our business get to where it is, and being able to help other people as well. And you're one of those faces we always look for when we get into a show. It's always nice to see you and Chris, and love hanging out at the auction and stuff. So
because of you, I went to the biggest wedding I've ever
that is
been
true
to in my life.
Yes.
I looked around, I was like, I've never been to a wedding with this many people.
It was a beautiful wedding. I'm so glad that we got to attend. It was, I love it.
Oh, I can't thank you guys enough for all the support. You guys are super awesome, and you've been a big part of the start of this whole journey. So I super appreciate everything you guys do too. You guys are just super awesome. We love you guys. Yeah, we're so excited to see you at the shows too.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll see you again in March. I think that's our next one. So we'll see you at March in Tinley.
Awesome.
And then Dallas after that. So do you have any final thoughts before we kind of wrap this up? Anything you want to share? We'll, of course, make sure you let people know where to contact you, website and all that good stuff.
Oh, for sure. I think maybe like one of the biggest things is I get a lot of people that ask me, oh, how do you do this art? It's crazy you could do the art. I drew once and it sucked. And so I never drew again. I get that a lot. People say that all the time. And at the end of the day, you just need to keep chugging along with it, and you can do it. It's a lot of practice. And I think this applies to a lot of other things or different businesses as well. But, nobody ever got really good at anything overnight. And so if you continue to try, continue to work, and if you work with others, that can be a huge help in your own growth when it comes to, whatever business that you're trying to get into, but especially in artwork, not giving up because you're frustrated, but instead using it as a learning opportunity to grow. That has been like a big shift, I think, that I've done. I used to get so mad when something would come out and I wasn't happy with it, but I have to remind myself, let's learn from this. How do we move forward and not do that or change things up? And I think that can be applied to business as well. When you get frustrated about one thing, as learning opportunity to continue growing and moving forward. Because before you know it, you'll be looking back there and you go, holy cow, look at how much I've grown. So I want people to keep going.
I think that's a great point. I think a lot of people see the end result and see where you are now and don't see the long hours or the late nights or the frustration or, all that kind of stuff. And it applies to really any business owner or anyone that has a skill or a talent that they hone to that level. So I think that's a really good point, is to just, you got to put in the work. You didn't just wake up one night and draw that picture behind you. That's years and years and years of work and of messing up and of.
Exactly. I've been lucky enough to be able to do this, consistently. I've been practicing for 3 years consistently. Not a lot of people have that time, and they shouldn't hold themselves to that type of standard. So, be nice to yourselves.
Well, be nice to yourself. I think that definitely ends on a good note.
Drop your socials though. Don't let
everybody know how to find you.
Yeah. So my website is AdelineRobinsonArt.com. And on Instagram, it's underscores in between, Adeline_Robinson_art, and then Adeline Robinson Art Facebook too. So if you actually go to my website, all my socials are linked to it. So I do a lot of time-lapse videos of my artwork and prop videos and post them up. So hopefully people enjoy them.
Yes, I always enjoy the time-lapse videos. Those things are really cool. It almost inspires me to get back into drawing.
Yeah,
almost.
Don't do it. You got enough stuff to do. You got enough stuff to do. You got enough stuff.
Adeline, we appreciate you being on the Cold Blooded Caffeine Podcast with myself and Trey. We really appreciate all the information shared.
And we can't wait to see you guys again in March. Looking forward to it already. Just so you know, not to rub it in too much. It's 77 degrees in Charleston. So mine said 82 when I was on my way back. Oh, was it 82?
Yeah.
82. Oh man, so
take that.
So we might see you sooner.
All right, on down.
All right. Well, thanks, Adeline, and we really appreciate everything you do. We'll talk to you again soon.
Guys.
All right.
I just wanted to give another huge thank you to Adeline Robinson from Adeline Robinson Art. If you haven't already checked out her website, please check out AdelineRobinsonArt.com and check out all the artwork that she has available. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Cold Blooded Caffeine Podcast. If you like this episode, please consider sharing, and subscribing, and we'll catch you again real soon.